Hey everybody, happy Monday. Good to be with you. I said in a sermon, it was I think a few weeks back, that one of the things that I do is I keep people on, like my Twitter account, that present varying ideas to issues, just to give me a balanced viewpoint of things. Even people that I regularly really just disagree with, and I keep them on there. And I can tell you why that's important. Because if you don't keep people on there like that, or hear thoughts from people like that, you'll find yourself with only a one side of a political or a social issue, and you'll never really understand the thoughts and the feelings of those who are on the other side of that same issue. It's not to say that they're necessarily right. I'm not saying that. It's just simply to say that there is more to everything than what one unbalanced side is pushing. And I think, and I hope that really makes sense to each and every one of us. Now, regarding something like the coronavirus, it's really helped a personality like mine that can tend to have such a strong opinion one way or the other. Maybe you can relate to something like that. What reading both sides has to say does for me is it keeps me from going really, we'll say, overboard, championing the cause of one side without considering the realities from the other side. And hopefully, by looking at multiple viewpoints and listening to them, hopefully it keeps me from championing the cause of a side through techniques such as arrogance or exaggeration or emotional extremism. Or at very least, what it does is it keeps me from championing a cause that is not quite fully right. And we as humans can tend to do that. We can jump onto something, even though it might not be fully right, but we can jump onto that when we only fill our minds with things that promote my current and infallible beliefs. As though we could never be wrong, right? And then we complain, this is the craziest part, then we complain about people on the other side who are behaving the exact same way, thinking that their beliefs are infallible. Now listen, I get that this is really just human nature. And I'm not promoting the thought that we should listen to all ideas and we should be tolerant of everything that's said out there, and we should just believe it and be okay with it. That's not what I'm saying. That's equally as dangerous as behaving as though your ideas are divine. What I am saying really though is this. There are a lot of things that we sink our heels into in an extremely unbalanced way that we're going to find out later just how off we were about it. And sadly, there are some things that we should sink our heels into that we let slide out from underneath us when we should have been solid on them. And way too often, I would say those things that we should have been solid on, we allow to slip out from underneath us because we're focusing on things that we didn't need to champion quite so boldly or so dogmatically. I want you to think about how Nebuchadnezzar did exactly that in Daniel. You saw on Saturday's video how he sunk his heels into his greatness and that he should be viewed by everyone that way. No doubt that he was probably thinking in his mind that, hey, if everybody pays attention to me and values me, this will be the best thing for the nation of Babylon. He so convinced himself that that was right that he was willing to sacrifice the lives of 3 young men in defense of his ideals or his point. But when that attempted sacrifice takes a really strange turn, he then seeks his heels into something else. And we might look at that and go, oh, that's way more mobile, more noble, because that's something I would more agree with. But in reality, it wasn't okay. So after throwing these three men into the fiery furnace, we get this in Daniel chapter 3, verse 25, and I'm going to read it quickly to you. After they came, he sees them in there, and the fourth person shows up. Of course, that was our Lord. Verse 25, Nebuchadnezzar says, look, I see four men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the fourth looked like the son of the gods. And Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps and the prefects and the governors and the royal advisors crowded around them, and they saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, the hair of their heads wasn't singed, the robes weren't scorched, and shoot, they didn't even smell like fire. And then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has saved his angel, or sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him, and they defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship a God they did not accept as their own. Therefore, I decree, this is what he says, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they should be cut to pieces and their houses be turned into a pile of rubble, for no other God can save this way. Then the king promoted them. That's quite something, and it almost sounds good, right? I mean, we as believers of God, we listen to that and we're like, wow, now Nebuchadnezzar is sinking his feet into making sure that no one is ever allowed to say anything bad about the one true God again. Doesn't that sound great? But really, is it a good idea to tell people that if they say anything bad about God, that they're going to be killed by being cut into pieces? We might think so because we might agree that no one should ever say anything bad about God. But God himself doesn't even agree to that, or we'd all be dead. And we need to be really careful about what we sink our heels into and what captivates our minds and our attention. There is in this passage, though, I would say one thing that we should sink our heels into. That we will trust and worship God, and we will worship God alone. That's the one thing we should be prepared to defy the king's commands against. Some of the other things that people are sinking their heels into right now are sadly only causing us to slip away from what we really should be locking into: trust and worship of God. And I beg you to consider that in your own world and think carefully about what you're attaching to with your time, your mindset, and your ambitions, what you're sinking your heels into. We'll see you guys tomorrow.